representing Aztec Empire, created by Husain
Maynor
And Javaria.
We'll be talking about the Aztec alphabet, or known as the Nahuatl writing. The alphabet consists of 4 basic vowels, I, E, A, and O. They use symbols to keep track of everything. They use symbols in names and times. They use it in recognizing gods and names of buildings. They use it in a lot of things. For our activity, everybody has to write their initials in the language.
Oh.
I got candy for you at the end, so quick right here. Right there.
We're going to be grading you on this. So.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, for real?
Are you serious?
I wasn't about to.
There. 3, 2.
I haven't even started.
Better start it. We already did it. What up, kid?
The Aztecs had a very good education system for this time. The boys had the noble boys school, the middle class, and the commoner boys class. The girls learned about religion, cooking, religious dances, and songs, and they learned about sewing as well. Here's a picture of students learning, and here's a picture of a school.
My topic for this presentation was religion. For the Aztec, religion was a very important part for their community. For the religion, Aztec was really, they worshiped many gods, from goddesses to gods. And they also practiced human sacrifice. That is a picture of a human sacrifice. You can see the woman stabbing him, and that's also another human sacrifice. They just rip the heart out when you're alive too. Those are examples of some gods that they worship at the Aztec religion. I'm going to name the top gods that they worship the most. And the first one is Husain, and he is the strongest god of all. And he is the god of the sun and the god of war. And the second one, the red one, is he is the god of wind and life. And he was the god that they mistaken him for Hernandez Cortez. That is the first guy that I was talking about. And that was the second. And now, just 2 more. Tazekupaka, he is associated with many things. He's associated with the magic, the night, and the earth. And Shokomiko was the god of agriculture, corn, and nourishment. That is the first god, third god. And that's the first one. The impact of their religion on the people of Aztec. Really, the people that were sacrificed were mostly veterans from past wars and prisoners. And the prisoners were forced to be sacrificed, except for the warriors. They volunteered themselves to be sacrificed to the gods. That is a picture of a god, the warrior, and that's a sacrifice. And those are prisoners that they captured from a war that they decided. Style of religion. They practiced human sacrifice. And I'm going to show you a clip of how they sacrifice.
Two shows keep back to go. Say
And that video is very accurate as the way that they sacrifice people there. That's really how they actually sacrifice. They just cut where their heart is and just rip it out. In the fall of Aztec religion. The fall was when the Spanish conquistadors came, and especially Hernandez Cortez. When he came here, this is a picture of Cortez. When he came here, they thought he was Cortez-cool, and they gave him everything that he wanted. Gold, like everything that the Aztecs had. And right here is when Cortez beat the Aztec, and that's when the empire started to fall. Not many guys know this, but the Aztecs have made mandatory education. They also allowed poor people. They also found chocolate, which is very special for them, and they also are the first people to make medicine. This is a picture of them going to school, and this is a chocolate drink that they made called atol.
Gold. The Aztecs had a lot of volcanoes. When the volcanoes had erupted, they would mix with the minerals and they would eventually create gold. As you know, the Spanish conquistadors had come and they tried to take over the Aztecs for their gold, and they killed many of the Aztecs. Here's a picture of the Spanish conquistadors taking the gold.
The social pyramid. The social pyramid consists of 5 classes: royalty, nobility, warrior, commoners, and slaves. And royalties was the highest one. And that was where all the emperors and kings were at. And noble class is where members of the royal family and military leaders. The warrior class consists of warriors and their families. The commoners class consists of middle class and third rate. And the slave class is the poorest one. They were slaves from previous wars. And that is a picture of the social pyramid.
Transportation. The Aztecs had a large city on an island. They had over 200,000 people living there. So they had no means of transportation, so they built waterways and canals. They built canoes from a simple hand tool to travel through the water. Here's a picture of a waterway. And here's a picture of a canoe they made.
Written expression. The written expression, the ways they wrote, they put symbols for many things, like dates, times, and animals. Now those are their expression. They wrote like this is Bach in the language, and that's the symbol for bone. And there's many other examples. Those are some other examples.
Mexico's climate, which you all know is very hot and dry. It's famous for its hot and dry land, and it's a great resource on agriculture. The city-states of the Aztec are surrounded by 7,000 feet of sea level, and all but the northern side of their land are surrounded by Central America, which is kind of in the middle of Mexico, and that is where their civilization took place. That's similar to farming, which is agriculture, and their land, and that's how they adapted, and that's how they survived.
The Aztecs had no currency, but instead they traded and bartered. They would trade also art for food. Basically, 30 beans would equal 1 rabbit. That's an example of trade, and this is an example of trade and barter.
Well, as I said before, they were made of city-states, and they were called alpaces. Each alpacete had a supreme leader and supreme judge and administrator. Hernan Cortez was a Spanish conquistador, which founded the Aztecs later in their civilization time, and soon took over their whole civilization. They were also known as the Aztec warriors. So some of the militaries, they started to become strong forces at a young age. Their smallest forces, which are called competents, had armed forces between 500 and 800 men each. That's the competent military right there. That it is Montezuma II leading their troops into the war.
Physical features of the region. There was a waterway in the Central America. It's now known as the Gulf of Mexico. Surrounding the Aztec was the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean. Here's a map that shows the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic, and the Pacific Ocean. And here's a picture of the Gulf of Mexico.
Market and trade. The Aztecs traded everything and anything they had. They traded art for other art, and they made art by jewelry, gold, silver, and other minerals. This is an example of trading. This is an example of this is an example of art trading food. They mostly did art with sculpture and paint. This is a sculpture, and this is a paint. Activity and recreation. Basically, in their religion, they did something called the recreation of the vine, which is basically the heart sacrifice, which they stabbed their heart and then they just grab the heart and take it out. This is an example of a heart sacrifice, and another example of heart sacrifice. Actually, clothing. The Aztecs barely had any clothes. They were basically naked, but they had some clothes on. That's an example of girls wearing their clothes, and either wearing like no clothes. Food and diet. The Aztecs had many food. They found corn, which is called maize in their language. They also found cocoa, which they made chocolate out of, and they also made a drink called atol, but they made it from chocolate and peppers. That's maize. That's atol. And that's meal. That's bread. Well, I was the one doing the timeline for this. the way they found Mexico. After the Spanish came, there was a prophecy that basically they had to find a place where an eagle was gonna catch this eating a snake. And they went out for a search, and they found it, and that's where present-day Mexico is. Cortez destroyed the city really badly when he came here, when he came to the Aztec Empire. He knocked down pyramids and temples, ripped down places and homes, and set houses on fire so no one can hide. They filled rubble in caseways so no one can escape by water. In less than 3 years, Cortez became a governor and a Spanish general of the New Spain. And the New Spain is Mexico. Right here, Cortez beats the Aztecs and takes over the city. And that is our presentation.